Welcome to Talk Ottumwa, a production of Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress. On this podcast, we'll talk about the local businesses in Ottumwa to give you the backstory to their success. We'll also talk about the economic initiatives that are driving the progress of the community. And we'll talk about the issues that the community faces and much more. So stick around and let's talk Ottumwa. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Talk Ottumwa. We have a guest today that probably needs no introduction. He is arguably the most energetic member of our Iowa legislature and maybe the busiest man that I have ever come across in my lifetime, Mr. Hans Wilz. How are you today, Hans?
That's quite the introduction, Mark. I think it's all true. That's so wonderful. Well done. I'm doing great. Again, kind of excited to do a podcast with you. We talked about it for a while and found the time to do it now, so hopefully we can get some questions answered and maybe find a solution or two, or maybe pose some more issues for people to consternate about.
That's right. Well, let's start off. How are things going for you? You know, with the first legislative cycle behind you, you're getting ready to come into the next.
Yeah.
How's everything working for you?
You just kind of, there's no handbook, because I asked several times, which is usually not my MO, but this was so much different than what I thought I did before. But when I really dug into it, and once I got my seat in the different meetings and my assignments on the different committees, it was no different than me starting up a company back when I did it, getting out of college, or helping the family business here in Ottumwa at the florist. You have to look for positive solutions to problems that will always exist. You have to be okay with people coming to you with problems, looking for answers, and you need to have a good sounding board at home. I'm lucky to have Beth Wilz as my wife, because you need a sounding board for somebody that can just kind of garbage in, garbage out. So, once you learn the process or make up your own, which I think is what I did, you come up with the realization that you're there to help the district you live in. The greater picture is, of course, the state of Iowa, because you're representing the state, but you're representing District 25, which for me is mostly Eldon Agency and Ottumwa. And so what's my superpowers? But I tried to figure out, what can I get accomplished? Because I'm not a real policy person. I'll be the first one to admit that. I can certainly read about it. We can certainly talk about it. I'll have some views on it. I'm more of a business person that has been put into a seat at the State House, which I think is a great thing, because it's a different viewpoint than most have. I came from the private industry. I started a couple companies. I had a family business. I'm a longtime Iowan and a forever time Ottumwan. And I feel like I can take that opportunity and get to know people up at the State House to entertain what Ottumwa and Southeast Iowa is really like. So my superpower was being able to have a seat at the table, and finding out that when I call certain people at the government level, they actually have to sit down and talk to me. And so I'm that conduit for a lot of people that are just really frustrated, whether it be with mental health services, where the river's running through, you name it. There's been phone calls about it, and that's the other thing I do, is I try to answer every single phone call, try to get back on every email, and there's a system you have to come up with for all these things. There's it's been a blast. To answer your question in one word, two words, a blast. The learning curve, I don't think that ever stops.
Oh, I seriously doubt that.
So now it's just a matter of finding where I fit, and my job, this year, not knowing, like having a handbook, was making sure that when the conversations existed at the State House and the government level for Iowa, that we had a voice, and that's as simple as it was.
Great. So is it everything that you thought it would be, or is it more than you thought it would be?
I had no expectations. I try to go into new opportunities in life with not too many expectations. I had friends that had done it before, I suppose. And I talked to people that were in offices, just because you don't want to walk into it blind.
Sure.
It's kind of like, we talk all the time, and, if you're going to go in a position and you're going to be making decisions, you want to be educated as best you can be. So is it everything I thought it would be? Yeah, I guess so. It was a lot thrown at you. I won't use any of the analogies that I hear on a regular basis. I will just tell you it's a lot thrown at you, and you need to really kind of discern where my knowledge base is.
Okay.
And sometimes who that knows more than you. And the number one thing is to listen. I know I talk a lot, but I've been told, and I believe that I'm a pretty good listener, because a lot of times people have a lot more knowledge than I do, and I want to understand where it comes from, and I want to hear it from the source. So you're not going to see me as much on social media or taking my information from newscasts. I'm going to get it from the person that's it affecting.
Okay. What committees are you sitting on, Hans?
Let's see. I'm on Health and Human Services. I am on Commerce. I'm on Public Safety. And I'm the Vice Chair for Health and Human Services Appropriations.
Okay. So those are all pretty important topics for this area.
I think they really hit home, when they sent me, when the speaker, Pat Grassley, our speaker, sent me a survey, all of us a survey, where do you think you fit? I responded back, well, you know better than I would, because you have done this for so many years. So he put me on the places where he thought I could have the most impact. Mm-hmm. And to your point, all three of those hit home in District 25 for sure.
Definitely. I know the issue wrapping around anything human services related is a consistent talking point here in Wapello County.
Listen, we know where we live. We're not the most affluent, we're not the least affluent, but we live in a place where we do have needs that maybe aren't being met through some appropriations, or actually just being seen as, oh yeah, that happens. But maybe it happens a lot more in District 25. Mm-hmm. And there's other districts like that. And I think that's the case when we look at the state as a whole and we appropriate as a whole. And it can be talked about through education. It can be mental health services. It can be addictions. It could be hospitals. Every situation is different. So a lot of times, Health and Human Services-wise, we have a higher need for certain categories than other parts of the state of Iowa, yet we're appropriated the same amount of money for it.
Right.
That's like saying it's a one-size-fits-all program, and that's just not the way it is.
Right. Well, you mentioned it, and you are the conduit for the citizens of Ottumwa and Wapello County for the state of Iowa. So can you give us just a brief overview of the state right now?
Oh, wow. That's the governor's speech. I'm not quite ready for that yet, the state of the state. I can tell you what, kind of where we got to last year as far as what people maybe saw or didn't see, where I think we need to go going forward as some priorities, I suppose, or at least a starting point. And I'll start it off by saying they'll be a little bit broad, because I don't think we can define exactly where we need to go for the exact same reasons I mentioned a moment ago. I'm going to talk about how it needs to be approached from District 25 in Southeast Iowa. And, Skylar Wheeler is going to come down from Northwest Iowa and have different needs and different priorities, maybe in the same genre, but maybe spoken a different way. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I don't even look at my notes. I can tell you that, when it comes to how can we put more money in every Iowan's pocket, and that's a topic of conversation across the board. It's through taxation. It is, property taxes were an issue and assessments were an issue. We did as a caucus, as a Republican caucus on the House side, get a lot of things through that are going to help that situation going forward. And we can go on to detail if you want to, but House bills and Senate bills, but really it's just a matter of let's figure out a way to make it more approachable and more usable. So assessments and taxes, that was a big deal. I think they're going to work themselves out, of course. I also believe that we have this new 3.9% flat rate tax that we put in place. I say we, the year before me they put in place. But it doesn't take effect until 2026. Mm-hmm. I think jumping forward and going back and forth in this conversation, that's something that should be a priority, or at least talked about. Let's move that up to now. Let's get that into the next tax year instead of waiting another year to implement. We feel very strongly that our budget can handle it. Let's not wait till 2026. Let's get that taken care of right now and get that flat tax in so mm-hmm. people know they're going to have a savings. The majority of people pay more than 3.9. So it would be awesome to get that implemented sooner than later and let that benefit affect all Iowans. So, tax-wise, I think that's a direction we're all trying to go. We always talk about schools and how are we going to approach schools and what's that look like. From a priority standpoint, I think schools should always be a priority. How we legislate that, again, when I talk to Mike McGorry and the folks down at Cardinal, it's different than you would approach it at Waukee. It's different than you'd approach it at Valley or Dowling. I use those as an example. We're a rural school in what they would consider an urban environment because of our population.
Right.
And that happens across the board. You and I talk about this all the time. We always fit into being pigeonholed as urban because of the size and population that we are, but truly, we're a very rural community.
Yeah, and somehow we're just right over the cusp.
Yeah,
of
by
what
like
rural
30
is.
people sometimes. You know what I mean? It just depends how they write it. So, I mean, when we look at our schools, I think we have to make sure that, everybody is being funded correctly. Are we making sure? And that's, when we talk about that, we have to remember, there's not just one funding source for all these institutions and all these, when we talk about the schools, it's not just Iowa. There's federal government spending being done as well. There's infrastructure money coming from the federal side. So we have to I like to know all the inputs before we look at our outputs and make sure we're not affecting something in a negative way when we're trying to be positive. Making sure that people are paid appropriately. Looking at how does that work? How does it affect the system, not just today, but decades down the road? If implementing a certain amount of pay raise for an initial teacher, a new teacher, just as an example, is that going to affect us all the way down the road in a positive way? Or should we be looking at a different way to do it and say, let's bonus people for tenure, let's bonus people for what they've done, and let's bonus people for different things. And I can't give you all those examples. I think it's something we need to work on as a caucus and as a community to say, how do we make sure our education system is strong in an economic climate?
Right.
And we all have this problem. And if we want to talk about what the number one problem in a relationship, in a business, in funding, it's finance.
Yeah.
So if we can try to help curb some of that, maybe we can get back to educating.
Right. So, education, you and I talk a lot about economic development, a lot.
We do.
And, obviously, in setting the stage for future economic development, education's a key component of that, and housing is a key component of that, infrastructural development for the community, public safety. We can talk ad nauseum about all the components for economic development, but all of that really boils down to creating a positive workforce for the community, bringing people into the community and keeping them in the community so we can, number one, retain the businesses that we have, and number two, build upon that for future business growth. Is there anything being done at the state level to help ensure that the state of Iowa and Wapello County has the assistance that we need to start building that workforce base?
I think there's a lot of programs out there that a lot of us I was not familiar with as much as I should have been. But of course, when you get in the position that I was elected to, a lot more people contact you. So there's a group that's called IJAG up at the high school, and it's a statewide, and it's remarkable. It's really being a progressive in education with students that maybe don't fit the mold in a different way. Not a bad way, but let's be honest, most kids, everyone's different. We're all different.
Yep.
So, how do we find ways to educate so it's beneficial going forward to those kids? And IJAG does that. I was just up in the classroom at the high school the other day, and I got a chance to speak with them. They did a presentation for me. I had 2 or 3 meetings after the fact with kids that graduated from there that wanted to have conversations about business. So that's huge to me because you can't learn everything from a book.
No,
a lot of that is
absolutely
communication, it's interaction, it's yet one more way with job shadowing and other opportunities they afford you to take not just a job, but to look at that job and say, what benefits do I get from that job for my future growth as a person and where I want to be in the community and what I want to do for a living.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really appreciate, because GoPip has been fairly involved over the last couple of years with IJAG.
Sure.
And one of the things that I truly appreciate, to your point, about the program is they teach soft skills, which textbooks are definitely not going to teach soft skills.
Right.
And quite honestly, there's a little bit of a struggle, I think, in the general classroom because they do have to meet certain metrics that soft skills don't actually get put in a curriculum. And the IJAG program, that is part of their curriculum.
Absolutely,
so,
it is.
We're fortunate that our newest employee actually is a product of IJAG, and she is remarkable. And I know that part of that is a direct result of her being touched by that program.
Oh, there's no doubt. again, it's a creative way to teach and learn. I mean, we have that concurrent learning with Indian Hills or other colleges where kids can get college credit while they're in high school. That's paid for, and it's a wonderful program we don't take enough advantage of, but it gives you yet another opportunity to try something on before you make an investment of hundreds of thousands of dollars for an education. When you go to college, you can actually get something accomplished in the 2 years or 3 years or in high school, still going through Indian Hills and going to the high school and graduate with 2 degrees sometimes days apart. The high school graduation's one day and your Indian Hills graduation is the next week. Those opportunities, I think, weren't being looked at as much as they are today. And the other thing is we just need to really understand, what do we need in our workforce? And are we teaching those skills? The one thing I see that we fall short on, and maybe not here in Ottumwa, but as an overall, because I think overall Ottumwa is doing a really good job. The empowerment of children, getting them involved, getting them back to school, that's some of the biggest things we have right now is truancy. If we're going to touch about on some of the hard parts, one of the things that happened after the interruption was truancy and kids not showing up and adults not showing up. That's something I'm not sure 100% how to fix.
Yeah, that's a tough one. And, that's been a conversation point at several workforce meetings that I've been part of, and, even school meetings that I've been part of. It's been a consistent message. People got used to being isolated at home, and I think that is going to be a hard nut to crack.
We've got, I say this, and I don't know that I have it coined yet, but we need Amazon-proof businesses. An Amazon-proof business model, what does that mean? It means you still have things that, quite honestly, robots and computers cannot do. So when you look at, growing your community and saying, we need hands-on jobs. We need things that our hands and our minds, working with our hands, can do that Amazon and those others, AI kind of, developments going on every single day, can't do. Yeah. The welding program is a great example of how kids can graduate in a couple years with their welding certificate and be making $60,000 a year and be employable in Southeast Iowa. Now, maybe it's not every job in Ottumwa. Maybe it's Pella. Maybe it's Oskaloosa. Maybe it's Albia. But, I think one of the first steps we have to take if we want to keep our youth in Southeast Iowa, we'd love to have them here in Ottumwa.
Absolutely.
Let's just start with that right now. But let's make sure they're not going to Des Moines or Iowa City. Let's keep them as close as possible, and when the opportunity pops up for them to be closer to home, give them that opportunity to do that.
Yeah, and I think that some things that people don't realize in the modern economy that we have, we don't necessarily need to compete at the business level. Sometimes it's the community level, and what I mean by that is like housing. We can be a bedroom community to Chicago, Illinois. We can be a bedroom community to Denver, Colorado, because we have the internet access. They can work remotely and still spend their dollars here.
It's a very good point. And if you look at, and I do this, I'm looking on Indeed and some of the other platforms that are out there, trying to find employment for people. And they have spin-offs now that are strictly remote. They've just separated it from, they've created a new website for it, or a one-click passage, if you will, for people to look for those remote opportunities. And yet that's another way for us to grow. A lot of people don't want to be, I was just out in Denver for the Minnesota-Denver game with my son. We travel to one away game a year. And Denver is different than what I remember. Not bad or good or indifferent. It's just they're growing, they're building, but there's people that don't particularly like where that city has gone, and it's mostly about bigger cities. California is the same way. We should be recruiting those people to come live a lifestyle they enjoy here and do their job via whatever their either a computer or over the phone, which is rare. Most of the meetings are Zoom meetings.
Right.
So now you really kind of choose where you want to live.
Yeah.
And so I think we're doing a good job of trying to build back our brand in Ottumwa.
Yeah, and one of those components, obviously, if we do intend to, which I think is a great segue, if we do intend to capture some of that market, is housing.
Great segue, Mark. Well done.
Thank you.
You've done this before. No, I'll go. Keep on traveling that path. You're absolutely right. I think we're aware of it, and that's kind of the conversation we have on a regular basis. I had that same conversation with Debbie Durham at Iowa Economic Development. She's our director. I talked to her about, where can we get different resources, different ideas, and to me, it's amazing that sometimes I think I found a whole new path. I'm excited, and then I make a couple phone calls and I find out we're already doing that.
Yeah.
Either you have contacted somebody, Kelly's contacted somebody, the city's contacted somebody. So that, although I'd like to say, I found the new one for you, I'm excited that we're traveling down the same paths to find solutions.
Yeah, and I think that one of the good fortunes that we have in the community that maybe a lot of people don't see because it is really just data, and data obviously doesn't yield immediate results.
Yeah.
But Ottumwa has went through the trouble already of doing a housing study to determine what level of housing that we need in this community and where we need it. We have 86%, 87% of our housing inventory is older than 1979, which I think we can all agree is a little bit problematic. We don't have a lot of housing inventory that's over $200,000, $300,000 price point, which again is pretty problematic. But
let's explain why that's problematic. Because I think sometimes people are just, like you were just saying, just hear the numbers and don't understand, I don't want a $300,000 or $400,000 home. And I get that. But when we're recruiting people to come here from different states that have outrageous real estate prices, let's just say we get somebody that wants to come here from California and just by chance, they owned a home. Or for that matter, Denver, Colorado, I was at a friend's house that, again, was one of these older homes in a cute community. I couldn't give you the square foot, but it wasn't much over 1,300 square feet in a very small yard. $980,000. Wow. $980,000. And that's in Denver. Now you go out California and you're not buying
well over $1 million.
1, 2, so these people are coming with an expectation to buy a house of a little bit more money.
Right.
Because that return that flipping of them moving and selling their home and buying a home here would be a tax consequence.
Right.
So they need a more expensive home. Mind you, maybe some of us don't. But when we're looking to recruit from other places, we have to understand we have it pretty good here when it comes to house pricing.
And I think that, to your point, there's a lot of that, and it far transcends the housing market. It goes into other areas of economics. I would point my finger straight at Wapello Chop House, for example. The people, there are certain people that look at a project, whether it's housing or business, whatever, and they say, we don't need that in this community. Well, it's not we don't need it in this community. It's you don't need it in this community. But if we're going to market to other people, corporations, if we have traffic coming in for tourism and they're buying their dinner off of the corporate bank book, why wouldn't we want to have a restaurant that's very nice that they can go to at the end of the day? The people that are coming in from California, why wouldn't we want that $300,000-$400,000 price point home that they can go to? We need all of that stuff, and in some cases, those dollars are based on what those people are bringing into the community, not what the people that are here are wanting to spend their money on.
Yeah, you're right. I think we all make choices. I'm going to put a plug out. We've got some of the best barbecue restaurants and establishments in Southeast Iowa, probably the tri-state area. The tri-state area. And they do great. So when you see that, you want to expand upon that. So you've got great barbecue. We're getting an Italian place in town, downtown. Wapello is just another piece of that puzzle where you have to have choices.
Yes.
And it's not just about, the people that live here, although we need to always take that into consideration.
Oh, absolutely we do.
But people are not afraid, and do it all the time. A 45-minute drive. Some people are an hour and 20 because we lose them to Des Moines or Iowa City. They'll go for an hour and a half and go eat and then come home. Mm-hmm. That could happen here. People will come here for the great barbecue that we have. Well, now we have a great steakhouse and soon to have an Italian. People make journeys for experiences.
Yeah, and it's interesting if you go out to Warehouse Barbecue. Many of the license plates that you see out there are not Wapello County. If you go to Wapello Chop House, interestingly enough, most of the license plates you see at Wapello Chop House are Wapello County,
Yeah.
which tells me exactly, what people thought that the people of Ottumwa were wanting. Obviously, places like Warehouse Barbecue, they're doing fantastic. They have 100% community support. I know plenty of people that make it at least once a week that
Absolutely.
they're going there.
Right.
But there's also the option or the element of choice that they want to be able to go someplace nice to take their significant other on a nice date, or just a great place that's quiet to lounge and have a drink for social hour or whatever. Someplace like Wapello will provide that option for them.
I honestly believe we could support more of that here in Ottumwa and in Southeast Iowa. We just haven't had the opportunity.
Right.
People make choices. We talk about, we won't dive too deep into the government thing unless, we probably will get into the conversation. We're not going to dive into it. Inflation, stagflation, whatever you want to call it. Yet this is coming up on Thanksgiving week, or all week, I guess. And this is going to be the largest travel holiday in the history of America. So people make choices what to do with the money they have or do not have. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think we should make those choices for them. I want everybody to be fiscally responsible. I want everybody to budget in their household. We didn't get a chance to touch on that, but I'd love to see at the high school level that we put a financial responsibility class in.
Oh, that would be amazing.
It's not what I grew up with. It's not checkbooks, but again, people make choices, and we should not make those for them. I think that when we try something like with soda, and we try, when people are a little bit discouraged about, why don't we do something else? That's private money. Somebody else is investing that in our community because they see the potential. We should take that as a positive.
Yeah, and that's obviously something that having choice is something that's going to definitely benefit the community. We can quantify this all day long, the amount of dollars that are leaving this community because they don't have the choice currently here.
Right.
This is somewhat anecdotal because I don't have the numbers behind it yet because it's so new. But clothing, we are losing tens of millions of dollars in the city of Ottumwa every year to Des Moines, to Iowa City, to the Quad Cities.
Yep.
And the proof is in the pudding. We get a new retailer in town that sells predominantly clothes, and they're having to get trucks brought in daily instead of weekly. Of course, I'm talking about TJ Maxx.
No. Okay.
They're having to bring in trucks daily instead of weekly at the first bit of opening. Now, granted, some of that's newness, but at the same time, people all of a sudden have an option to spend their dollars locally, and they're taking full advantage of it, which is fantastic for the Ottumwa community.
Well, let's be honest about something like that. A well-known brand like TJ Maxx, respected. I think they do a good job. I used to work with them on the corporate level. They're good people out in Massachusetts. They don't enter into anything quickly, as you well know.
Oh, yes.
But they also are a driver for the region. So now you have all these people that are coming here from Albia, Bloomfield, probably almost a 45-mile radius. Centerville would probably reach it as well, that are spending their money here, and that tax money comes in through Ottumwa, where you have the local option tax. The benefits are great. To your point of a clothier, growing up in downtown, I can go down history lane with you. Our family's been here since 1956. We had stores downtown. Our original store is still on top of North Court, but we had 5 men's clothiers. We had Weavers, we had Pollings, we had Ernie Siegel. I can go down there. You guys will probably fill in the list for us on the comments. But we had 5 men's clothiers, and they did fine.
Plus, we had a great shoe store with Brown Shoe Fit.
Oh, yeah. Lest we forget, the Shoe Man.
Yes.
We need those things. And we do have the women's boutiques popping up, which I think helps. But do you see a men's boutique anywhere?
No.
I talk about it all the time, and it's like, who's going to take that project on?
Yeah, in fairness, most men only buy new clothes once every 3 years. So.
I'm different. I think you are too. I like refreshing my wardrobe on a regular basis.
I do too.
But I never get rid of anything old.
Mainly because my weight fluctuates like that.
I try, I keep the smaller sizes in hopes they'll fit again someday.
Same.
Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I think there's opportunity for young entrepreneurs to come in and try something. That's where I think I know we're trying to get better. We've got the rec center at the college, that's there, the regional entrepreneur center. And I've been on the board since day one out there, and we're trying to incubate businesses. And we've done some of that, and the numbers prove it. And they have the small business division out there as well, so you can go out there and get answers and help for free. Those are tools that we need to make sure people understand are there, because we're going to spawn growth in Southeast Iowa when people take a risk. Because that's what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
And people are, that... And I'm going to tell you this, sometimes, when you want to start your own thing, and I did this all my life, so, I feel like I have some knowledge on it. Sometimes it's a side gig. I get you want that financial security, you want that paycheck coming in, but you have a passion for something else. Then, you do it as a side gig until you feel like you can make that jump and make it your life gig. And we don't have as much of that as we used to have, for sure. People are a little bit less, they're not entering that private business world as much. They all talk about it, and they all want to do it. I don't know that they don't have the tools, or they just don't see the potential in it. But there are a lot of categories in retail, especially, and even manufacturing, small manufacturing, that there's opportunity all over the place.
Yeah.
But it takes capital investment, and that's where I think the state can get involved. I think we do a pretty good. Debbie Durham's a phenomenal director for economic development.
She's a brilliant
She's
mind.
Spitfire. Had lunch with her the other day. I really enjoy talking to her. She listens to ideas and analyzes those ideas and say, where do they fit? So I think there's opportunity there for us to find a path for young people to get some financial help, because, again, that's the number one driver of failure is financial. So, how do we give them a hand up, not a hand out? How do we give them a hand up?
Right.
Put some measuring sticks on that to say, hey, you're doing great, and not just give you the money and walk away.
Right.
We have to have things in line, and we have to have support in place to help these young people, because there's not a handbook.
Right.
Every YouTube video tells you how to fix your washing machine. It does not tell you how to start a business.
Yeah, and the ones that do tell you how to start a business probably aren't very good pieces of advice.
Especially if they're charging you.
That's
If you're
right.
paying something to learn off of YouTube, they're the small business making money.
Exactly.
Not you.
But hey, for those that are listening, if you are interested in starting a business and you do want some help, reach out to us. We can give you all the tools that you need to get going.
Oh, absolutely. That's it. That sometimes you don't know where to look. So obviously, Mark has a plethora of places. That's what he does. In case you don't know what Mark does, we'll turn this interview around. We'll turn it with GoPip. He's constantly looking for opportunities for Ottumwa. And that opportunity sometimes exists in manufacturing, retail, restaurants. He constantly is on the phone, obviously in Zoom meetings. He's going to conventions. And those are all huge pieces of the puzzle that we need to stay very much on top of. Because sometimes there's people out there that do it better than us, and Mark's looking for those people to help us. Because, again, I don't think when you took this job, 2 years ago?
Almost 2 years
Almost
ago.
2 years ago, that they gave you a handbook and said, here's what needs to get done. They said, no, here's what we need, figure it out.
Exactly.
And I think that's not a bad way to go about it. Like, that's how I started at the State House. Your first question to me was, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to figure it out.
Right. And in some cases, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If it is working somewhere else, take it. Make it work here. Massage it, make it work.
I think you're exactly right. I think education is always important, but examples of success is where I'd like to get a lot of my knowledge from. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's not a perfect fit for Ottumwa or Southeast Iowa, but there's a glimmer of hope that if it can happen there, it can happen here.
Right.
And quite honestly, when you look at those measures of success or other successes from other people, I know what you do. You look at the demographics of where a community is and why they're thriving when we have the same demographics. What are they doing differently? What's their formula? And they're usually okay to share it because you're not competing for the same. They're already doing well.
Yeah, if I'm calling some community in Texas, they couldn't care less whether I'm borrowing their knowledge.
No.
Because I'm in no way competing with that community.
Would you not think that, they're proud and they like to share their story?
Yeah, and absolutely. And I would do the same thing if that community in Texas called me.
See, I think we just need a lot more of that. We're at the state level, we'll tie it all back. We're going to tie all of our jobs together in what we do, and it's a team effort. Let's just put it that way. We look at what's the best model for compensating our teachers. Let's go find one that works before we try to recreate the wheel, like you just said.
Yeah, there are several things that have been done at the state level in Iowa that I can think of that are models from Florida, models from Arizona that have worked fabulously.
You tweak them a little bit. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned. I don't go to a lot of legislative, I don't know if they're conventions or summits. They give them a fun name. But I've been to a couple, and because I think I needed to understand the process a little bit more. And yeah, you get that on a regular basis. You meet people from other states and you say, hey, listen, we're having this problem in our mental health arena. What are you doing to correct it? And a lot of times, if there's something that works for them, we want to do the same thing. I think the bigger issue with everything we're talking about today, we haven't touched on workforce, and we will. That's one of the driving factors. We touched a little bit about, educating our workforce, but the driving factor is we are going to be competing with other states, whether they're around us or all across the nation, for certain professions. And right now, if we want to really jump, and we're trying to, but on mental health and drug addiction and specialty needs in the mental health arena, we're going to have to recruit doctors and physicians and behavioralists from around us, because what we put in place for education and to get that education moving forward and to incentivize young people to get into that profession, and we're going to pay for your school, it's going to take 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And we have an instant need for those things right now. And I use mental health because that's something I think we all understand. But that's happening in manufacturing as well. That's happening in IT. That's happening in places throughout our workforce that we are going to have to put on a very good resume of who we are and why you want to live in Iowa.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's not just it's going to be that 3.9 flat tax. It's going to be a better quality of life. It's going to be the people of Iowa. And so I want to make sure the people of Iowa stay positive, because we do believe we do it pretty darn good, and maybe a little bit more open to innovation.
Yeah.
Whether it's a steakhouse or a rec center, there's reasons that we're trying to grow the quality of life.
Yeah. Well, and and this kind of goes back a little bit in the conversation. One of the things that I hear a lot specific to workforce is we don't have a workforce problem. We have a laziness problem, which that irritates me so much, because I can pull almost to the number out of the top of my head what the labor force information is here in Wapello County specifically. And, one of the examples that I use is, so last week there were 938 unique job openings on Iowa Works' website, okay? 238 of those jobs were nursing or healthcare specific positions, which all of need special certification, special training. I don't care if you have 15,000 people looking for work in Wapello County. If none of them have those degrees, then we have a shortage of workforce in this area. So it's really easy to say, be negative and say, oh, we just have a people problem. It's not a people problem. It's a skills problem that we have here. And I assume it's probably that way all over the state. We do have significant skill gaps, for especially the trades programs.
You're absolutely right. There's no doubt that there's a larger need for certificate-type jobs. And I say a certificate meaning accreditations, schooling, or higher education.
Right.
Let's just call it a certificate. You've got to be certified in some way, shape, or form to do that job.
Yeah.
And that's where it's very competitive. And that's
Welders is another great example.
I'm sorry?
Welders is another great example.
Exactly, yes. So when you look at that, you have to say, we're going to be recruiting from other places sometimes to get those people here. The other thing I think we have a large problem in I think it's now developed not just in our younger generation, but maybe generationally, is job hopping. It's something we don't talk about very much, but I see the kids doing it. I see adults doing it, not investing themselves. And I always want for betterment, okay? But when you just get tired of a job and just quit going, you don't and you go to the next job and you do it 3 or 4 times a year, maybe more. There is some ideas that you want to go out and find what's going to be best for you and what fits the best. But I think it goes back to that whole lazy thing where I just didn't feel like going to work this week, and I didn't, but I know I can find another job because they're out there. That's a mentality, and that's a mindset that we need to change.
Yeah.
We need to put those people in a position to say, listen, you can't just get a check from the government or from the state or anybody else when you're able to work.
Yeah. At some point, I use this word in my personal life a lot. Accountability. There has to be accountability, and that accountability has to start with yourself.
Yeah. Listen, I could spend another 2 hours with you talking about problems and issues and things that I have to fix in my own life. I mean, I think we all have that. And if you don't, then I want to learn your model. I want to figure out how you do it. But yeah, you have to be accountable to yourself first and say, I need to get these things taken care of so that I can benefit others.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of us look at it that way. I don't think everybody does, and we're all built differently, but you've got to be the best you if you want to be a person that's going to be a positive influence on the community you live in.
Well, and I think that I had Mike McGrory in here a couple of weeks ago talking with him, and this was a statement that I made then, and I believed it then, I believe it now. One of the things that Ottumwa Community School District is instilling in the kiddos these days is the hashtag Be the Best program, but it's not be the best, it's be the best you. Mm-hmm. So, everybody has an individualized standard, and be the best of that standard. So I think that at least our school district is going a long way to, making sure that everybody is, number one, accountable to themselves, and number two, trying to foster them to be the best that they can be.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about truth all day long. And I talk to Mike on a regular basis as well, and I know where I come from. If there was a magic pill or something I could put in the water to make parents more accountable and want to be more involved in their kids' lives. Mind you, there's people that have to work 2 jobs, and there's people that have to work 24-hour shifts. I get it. But there's got to be a place where we want to be involved in our kids' lives. Whatever that means, as much as we can give of ourselves, no matter what the sacrifice. And we see less engagement that way. So, do I want the schools to raise my kids? No, I don't. But I know there's a lot of kids going to school that don't have that encouragement from home. So it's the next best option.
Fact.
It's true. So let's just call a spade, but it's the next best place because we want them to spend quality time there and be empowered.
Yeah.
And feel good about themselves. And then I would love to see, I don't know how you do it. I'll talk to Mike, but how do we get kids more involved in activities in school? Because let's be honest, the longer they stay in school, the more they're going to have that positive role model in front of them.
Right.
And I'm not dishing on parents. Everybody has different problems or issues or just life. But if our schools are doing a great job of empowering kids, and again, I'll repeat it, that should not be the teacher's responsibility. But it's certainly nice to have a place for a child to go that doesn't have that at home to get that positive influence.
Yep, absolutely.
And it's, we didn't train our teachers. This is not what our teachers went to school for.
Right.
They went to school and bless them. They're like nurses. They chose to help people. So we need to give them the tools the best we can to help them do that. We didn't train them to be crisis counselors, but maybe we need to go back and look at our education system and how we're raising our teachers and say, we need to give them some background in what they're going to get into because they are becoming crisis counselors.
Yeah.
They are becoming behavioralists. And they need to have the right tools to do that.
Right. It's funny that you say that. We're having this conversation about educators now. A year and a half ago, we were having this exact same conversation about the police officers in the communities.
Yeah. All true. I think that when we look at our society and what we're responsible for, it becomes more and more and more every day. And do we have the best? And it's obviously a model that's always being reshaped and talked about. But government moves slow. I have learned that. Some days I feel like we're not going to get it all done. Then I realize we're on government time, so we have a week to do it, which sometimes really irritates me. I'm just not that person. But you have to work within the confines of your job. Are we handling healthcare correctly? Our biggest, I think one of the biggest things, not just in Ottumwa, but across the board, is emergency rooms. You hear about the wait time in an emergency room. You hear about some of the amazing things they do to save lives, but then you hear about some of these people that are waiting 6-8 hours, maybe overnight, to get a bed. And when you dive into why is that, is because the emergency rooms are handling more of the addict problems and more of the mental problems, and that's not what they were built for.
Right.
And those people can't just be let out. I say that, I guess they could walk out. I don't know how that works 100%, but they're filling beds that are made for different kinds of medical emergencies. So
Yes.
why are we not triaging those and creating a separate, almost different lane to travel at our institutions, at our hospitals, and saying, check in. I would call it triage, in all honesty. This is probably more of a mental issue. This is more of an addictions issue. Travel down this hallway. We have specialists down here for that. And we keep the medical emergencies separate from that. And is it going to cost more? These are just theories in mind. Probably will. And do we have the professionals for it? I don't know, but we need to go find them.
Right. But at the end of the day, not addressing those issues costs society a lot of money.
You want to talk about one of the reasons why we pay more for health care, and it can be driven right to your emergency room. And we see it here in Southeast Iowa, but don't feel special. Okay? This is not a place to be number one on the podium, but everybody's on this podium right now. And it's one of the places that's driving healthcare costs dramatically, because one of the most expensive places to go to get your healthcare, and that's why it's called an emergency room, is for emergencies. So it costs a little bit more because it's critical. It has to happen now. But we also learned during the interruption that that's the only place you could go. Mm-hmm. So once you have a habit, that's kind of, you keep on following it. And that's the most expensive place for people to go. That's the highest billing room for critical care right away. Now, obviously, there's surgeries and all that good stuff. But I'm saying on a day-to-day basis, hundreds and hundreds of people can go through your emergency room. And in Southeast Iowa, and just in Iowa in general, Medicaid, Medicare pay for 70% of that.
Wow.
70% of those people going through those doors, that's a different number. It's like 71, whatever. But it's over 70% is paid by the government, be it your state or your federal. So wouldn't you think that we would want to find a solution for that? Because that's an expense that's being put on all of us. So then we're paying for it through our taxes and everything else, but we're also going to pay for it. You're double dip, because now your insurance is going to go up, because that's just the way that works.
Right.
So as you can see, I'm getting a little bit louder, a little more passionate. I want to find solutions for things that I think are obvious, that they're maybe not broken, but they're certainly not working as efficiently as they could.
Right.
And I think if you sit down with the healthcare institutions, they're going to tell you the same thing.
They most definitely will tell you the same thing, because it's a problem to them as well. It's costing them more money, and it's taxing their services, hurting their reputation, because they can't treat people as fast and as efficiently as they want to.
No, and that's full circle. How do you like what you're doing? When I can sit down and talk and see an obvious solution. And quite honestly, almost every time we talk about something that is subsidized or funded by the state and federal government, I found that we need to go look for efficiencies. There shouldn't be a place that says we've been doing this for 20 years. Well, now I really want to look for efficiencies.
Yeah. The worst excuse in the world is we've always done it that way.
Yeah, so now I know we need help. And I think that's across the board. I mean, I think sometimes we have great intentions for an organization or for a group or for something we put in place, but then from the state side, I'm going to put it on us for sure. What are the enforcement mechanisms, and what are the penalties, and do any of those matter if we need the service?
Right.
So we have to look at ourselves as a solution, but also look to the community and say, where do you see it broken? And then go right to the institution, right to the group, and say, we're going to give you a chance to tell us where you're inefficient. I think you'd be much better at it, and you can come to us with a solution before we just go cut funding.
Right.
Because that usually doesn't fix it. It just does what the people want, maybe. But I think we need to go find solutions from the source.
Right, but just arbitrarily cutting, we always end up, every time that happens, it's almost a cut off your nose to spite your face sort of thing. It always comes back in a negative way to the people who thought that doing that cut was going to be a positive thing. Almost 100%.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of great stuff that happens at the state level, and we really do talk through things. And I think sometimes in my world, I used to do modeling of our business before I'd implement something and say, if I was to do this, what would the outcome be? And it shouldn't always be it creates more sales. Because in a business, if it creates more sales, that's great. But if it's not profitable sales, then all that is a number. So you have to have more than one measuring stick for success across the board. And I use my sales thing is because that was where I came from. But the model fits everything.
Absolutely, it does.
It doesn't matter if it's sales is the one thing you're trying to get, but if it's not profitable, who cares about sales? Now you could do $1 million and lose $1 million, and it makes no sense. Or you could do $100,000 in sales and make $40,000 in profit, and that's the model you want to replicate.
Yep.
So it's not always bigger. Sometimes it's more efficient.
Yep.
For sure.
Well, I guess that we've talked about a lot, Hans.
I'm glad you recorded all this so I can hear it later on.
What do you think your priorities, aside from everything that we've just talked about probably, what do you think your priorities are going to look like for 2024 as Representative Wilz?
I can tell you my personal, and that doesn't always mean it's going to happen. And I truly believe this. I mean, we need to do things that help every single Iowan. So when I look at, when I look at my budget, be it my business or my family or my kids' budget, what are the most expensive things on there? And it's one of them is energy for sure, whether that's fuel or electricity or heat, and taxes are another one that I think we have a bit of an answer for. So the next one's insurance. It's just out of whack. And so how do I work with those entities who are huge in not just size but also in need? I mean, reliability with them is probably the number one thing we all care about. We talk about the price of things we pay for, but we need reliability. I mean, the last thing we want is for our energy not to work. So in sitting down with Alliant and Mid-American all summer, is how do we get on a path that makes it more equal? And I say more equal, where both of those entities are charging the same price for the same product, be it Alliant and Mid-American. And they're different energy companies, obviously, but, Ottumwans, honestly, we know this. This is not new. We pay more for electricity than the people that are in the Mid-American zone.
Yeah.
So that's an economic deterrent for you when you're out trying to sell something.
The concept of rate equalization is interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, and that's probably a whole nother show. When I say, how do you drive insurance costs down, I can't go to the insurance company and say, you can't do that anymore. We need to help them find efficiencies. And if we can attack one of the bigger problems that I see, and that's in the emergency room, and that would drive costs down, then in theory, that should drive costs down for local paying insurance people like ourselves, and for Medicaid and Medicare, which we all pay into. So I think it's looking for efficiencies and what I think is broken, and understanding I can't fix the machine, but I can help change the oil and make it run more efficiently. The same is going to be said when it comes to education. It's an institution that is fully funded by the state and federal government. So let's look for ways to be efficient. And the best part about that is the people that are involved in those categories in southeast Iowa are phenomenal. That's all there is to it. I've got great superintendents. I've got great people at the AEA that I think sitting at the table and talking about it is number one, and that's happening. Those things are happening for sure. Those are my passions, is to find better efficiencies. I'm still not the guy that plans on writing a bill unless somebody comes to me with something that is earth-shattering, and it's gonna, I want less government. Because I'm there. I can tell you right now, less government's better. Because I think that way we can be more transparent. I think people need to understand what's going on in their governments, and it's probably really hard to do when you've got 356 bills that pass in the span of 100 days. You think it's hard for me? I can't imagine what it's like for y'all. Because before I did this, I didn't know how to even hardly look it up.
Right.
And even then, for me, it's a little bit difficult still.
Yeah, because even if you can find it, there's an education component to understanding what some of that stuff actually means.
Yeah, and the code book, a whole other story. But I mean, so let's stick on what we're trying to. That's what I would like to see happen. I want to say for Iowa as well. What does that mean? I mean, I think school resource officers are a great thing. I haven't met a school resource officer that I know that wasn't liked by all the kids, and that just goes a long ways. It helps keep the schools safe. It also creates a bond and a relationship with our police force and the young adults. seeing them as and this is all growing. These are young kids, impressionable. Those are all the kind of things we need. I think we need that in rural schools. They can't afford it. So how do we help fund something like that? I think that's not just from a safety standpoint, but I think it's also helping that segment where we need more people to go into that field, have the opportunity to see and work and actually day-to-day see an officer in the schools and have the ability to talk to them. I think that's important. When I can look at the list that they sent me home with from Des Moines, and I think it follows pretty simply. We shrank, state government last year. We're looking at doing that with committees right now and commissions, and that's hard. I get why I'm getting so many phone calls about it because everybody wants representation. But there's a lot of those that were in existence that haven't done anything for decades.
Right.
So there's some cleaning house to be done there. I don't think it's fully done yet. I don't think that Greg Polson has made all the final decisions to send to the governor's desk. So those of you that have sat down and talked to me about it, those of you who called and emailed, we're still talking about it. There's a lot to be done there. So ensuring that we maintain a strong economy is huge for us in Iowa, and I think that probably goes to the root of who I am. That to me is a business. Mm-hmm. Mega sites will come down the pipeline this year, and you and I have talked about it, and I need to make sure it's not a one size fits all. And when I say mega sites, if you want to go into that a little bit more later on, but it's basically how Iowa's trying to recruit bigger business to come to the state and what the requirements are to do that. And I don't like a one size fits all program of any kind, and that has been, Director Durham has told us that's going to change, and we're going to make it so it fits the Ottumwas, the agencies, the Eldons of Iowa, not just the Des Moines and the Iowa cities and the Sioux cities of Iowa.
Right.
So I think we're being heard, and that's probably my biggest thing. I'm going to continue to sit at the table. I mean, that's my superpower. So when I see there's an opportunity for Southeast Iowa to engage in a grant or find funding to help grow something, or educationally put in a program in Indian Hills, or help get a new classroom at the high school through a specialty grant, then that's where I need your help. I need people out in the community that are so passionate about what they do, and they know there's something out there they can't seem to get to the finish line. You call me up, I find the avenue, I travel it with you, I travel it for you, and we try to get to the finish line. My job is to take down roadblocks.
Yep. And you've done a pretty good job of that so far.
Thank you.
Have we missed anything, Hans?
I'm sure. Not intentionally. But yeah, I mean, I love talking about it. I would love to have more open forums. You and I are going to talk about doing some of those, getting people involved in the community. I think if anybody can get their voice heard, it just feels a heck of a lot better. And understand, when getting your voice heard is one thing, but actually having somebody act on it for you, let me tell you right now, that feels even better. Mm-hmm. So give me that chance. I will do everything in my power to get you answers. And if I don't know the answer, I typically can find somebody else well above my pay grade that can help us.
Good. Well, Hans, thank you for coming in today and agreeing to do this podcast and having a good conversation.
Absolutely.
And anybody, can you tell people how to contact you if they want to reach out?
Well, obviously you can go on the legislative website for Iowa. It will give you all my credentials for the Capitol. But you guys know I live here. So it's simple. We own Ed the Florist right on top of the hill. I have an office up there. I don't have a problem with you stopping by. Sometimes I'm not always there, but you can stop by. You can certainly reach out to me. My email address is HANS at the letter R, the word next, the word thing.com. That's my personal email. I hope you use it. Do the quick math. It says our next thing. I wasn't sure what my next thing was, but I knew I was going to do it with others, so that's why it's our next thing. And right now it is being your state representative and representing you. And so use the email. My phone number, 641-799-0227. I'm an open book. Call me. People use it all the time. But do realize that I try to get back to you quickly, but sometimes it might take a day or so. That's just that's the way it is, especially in session. That starts up in January 9th again, and we're 114 days into every day getting things done. So I'll be in committee meetings a lot.
And again, to poke a little bit of fun at you for just a second, Hans.
Okay.
And I mean this a little bit in jest. if you're looking for Hans, really all you have to do is open your eyes because, again, the dude is one of the busiest people I know, and he's probably somewhere in town if you just look around.
That's fair.
So, well, everybody, thank you for listening to this episode of Talk Ottumwa, and I will say this until my dying breath: please get involved in the community process. Please get involved in the political process. Be aware of the issues, and make sure to go out and vote on those issues, and be interactive with your elected officials.
Take care of where you live, folks. It all boils down to you have a voice.
All right. With that, thank you, everybody, and check out the next episode of Talk Ottumwa. Greater Ottumwa Partners in Progress would like to thank the following Signature Circle investors who help us deliver on our mission to advance the prosperity of the Ottumwa region: Cargill Incorporated, Seafirst Credit Union, Elliott Oil Company, John Deere, McCune and Reed Insurance, Ottumwa Regional Health Center, the Ottumwa Legacy Foundation, South Ottumwa Savings Bank, City of Ottumwa, and the Wapello County Board of Supervisors. Please visit www.gopip.org to keep up on community events, podcasts, and everything Ottumwa.